blockbuster trade on free agency. Former Raiders tight end Darren Waller traded to the New York Giants for, what is that, a third-round pick number 100, the pick you were saying that they got for the Kadarius Toney trade. So on the one hand, let's start with this. Huge move for Daniel Jones and the Giants.
Oh, massive move for Daniel Jones. I thought you were going to expand on that.
No,
yes,
no,
massive
that's
move,
where we're starting.
100%. So it's the compensatory pick the Chiefs earned for, I think, Ryan Poles getting hired by the Chicago Bears. They traded for Kadarius Toney, gets moved again for Darren Waller here. Look, we kind of hinted at this morning, Darren Waller was believed to be in a trade package to the Chicago Bears, the number 1 overall pick. So he had been made available. And I had a mock trade for DeAndre Hopkins going to the Giants earlier this offseason. That was a wink, wink, hint, hint. I'd heard they were in the market for a veteran pass catcher. Obviously, it was not DeAndre Hopkins, but I heard they were exploring that market, trying to add a big-bodied guy for Daniel Jones to throw to. So we get that now with Darren Waller. Raiders deserve some credit for both Derek Carr and Darren Waller, where extended last offseason, but they don't give massive signing bonuses and push a bunch of cash and cap down the line. They keep the deals balanced and flexible, enables them to trade and cut Derek Carr without taking a massive financial penalty.
Yeah, we'll get to the Raiders in a little bit, but from the Giants' point of view, obviously you bring in a guy with the kind of talent that Darren Waller has, but as you say, it sort of ticks the box of finding a potentially elite pass catcher in an offseason that doesn't have a ton of them. Free agent market, the top sort of freely available free agent was Jacoby Myers, who ironically the Raiders end up signing, but that's kind of the top guy that was available in the marketplace. When we're talking about the draft and we're casting our eye forward, maybe tight end is a different story, but from a wide receiver perspective, the kind of criticism of this class is there isn't a ton of these sort of true number 1 alpha receiver type guys. It's more a bunch of second type receivers. So they go and get this one potential superstar in Waller. Isaiah Hodgins, did break out last season, showed a lot for them. They can still now add potentially another one of these, number 2 options in the draft and end up coming up with quite a well-rounded receiving core with this one move.
And they needed that big body, right? I mean, you mentioned Hodgins, who is a bigger player, but, when Wan'Dale Robinson comes back healthy, they bring back Sterling Shepard on a 1-year flyer.
Right.
They don't have that, not that he's an X receiver, but again, a guy that you're going to line up, and Daniel Jones, can put the ball in the air and let him go up and get it and, box out defenders. So it does make a ton of sense. Like you said, this was the avenue to adding an elite pass catcher was a trade, right? They're not there in the draft. They're not there in free agency. It's the Giants. Also, if you're going to commit to Daniel Jones, if you're going to tag Saquon Barkley, no half measures, right? You better go for it. You better make a couple other moves. This makes a lot of sense.
And not just that, but Daniel Jones has now been skewing towards that conservative end of the spectrum in terms of average depth of target, where he works, the passing game, that kind of thing. Last season, his average depth of target was 6.5 yards downfield. That's one of the lowest figures you're going to find. And, if that's what he's going to be, if you're paying him that kind of money, well, let's give him a target to work that area as much as humanly possible. Instead of leaning against that and saying, let's get him a dynamic, deep down the field pass catcher and try and, create some more of those big plays or enforce a higher average depth of target, they've almost leaned into it and said, well, if he's going to be targeting this area anyway, let's get a guy who can work that area really well and make sure that these 6.5 yard per attempt passes are actually going to result in something really good.
Yeah, and also down in the red area. I mean, when they got down there last year, it was his legs in Daniel Jones that were being utilized. At 15 touchdown passes. Now, you get that red zone target for him. Like you said, though, you don't have to push the ball down the field. You can still throw underneath. But Waller, obviously a great yards after the catch guy, can make players miss in the open space for a tight end. They had to do something. Once you commit, you got to do something.
So let's pivot to the Raiders side of this because, you're giving them a lot of credit for the way they structured this contract in a way that enables them to do this. I was making the point this morning that, if you're in a division with Kansas City and the Chargers to a lesser extent, and who knows what the Broncos will end up being under Sean Payton, but just starting with the Chiefs, when they've got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and they start off every year as the prohibitive favorites for the Super Bowl, and you have Jimmy G as your quarterback, why would you dismantle or even take anything away from the receiving core that he currently has, which when you bring in Myers, now you got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs on the 1-year franchise tag. That's a really impressive group of talented skill position players that encompass all the positions you're going to want. And now you just chip away with that. Okay, you save the $10 million in cap space. You get a third-round pick that you can sort of redeploy. But to me, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze of moving him on.
No, I hear you. And the thing, too, is Foster Moreau is a free agent, so you don't have that young guy behind him. Obviously, could have done more last year with all the runway he had with Waller missing a ton of time. But there isn't that replacement readily available right on the roster. As has been reported, they've been looking to move him for about a year now. So it also could just be simply the relationship kind of broke down when he wanted his new contract. The Packers almost got him. In the Devontae Adams deal, you can't trade a player for a franchise tag player. So the league basically vetoed that trade, it sounds like. I hear you, right? We're talking about trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Trying to score with them to a degree is kind of the only way, and Waller, in theory, would have gone a long way in accomplishing that.
Or it might not be the only way, but when you look at the Raiders' defense, like that's not going to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do between now and next year to get a defense that's capable of offsetting the kind of disadvantage you're going to have on offense. Whereas when you look at the group we just mentioned, you can make an easy case that you have a significantly better group of skill position players across the board than the Chiefs do. So, okay, they have a much better quarterback, but your talented playmakers are better than their talented playmakers. And now, you might not have changed that dynamic completely, but you've eaten into it a little bit.
Yeah, no question about it. It is interesting now too. With Jacoby Myers is not a replacement for Darren Waller. Like
Right.
You do have two guys that can win over the middle of the field. You save, I guess, some money with bringing in Myers and getting rid of Darren Waller, but you now don't really. Devontae Adams, of course, is that big body guy you can go to in the red zone, go on third down, things like that. But they want to run the football. They want to do a lot of things that Darren Waller certainly helped them do.
I think it's probably also reaching the point where, from their perspective, he hasn't been healthy the last couple of years. Yeah. He's reaching that age where it's a concern. The money attached to him is big. There are a lot of reasons why you can understand why they would sort of be looking to move on from a guy like that in abstract terms. But we're not dealing in abstracts. Like, they are in a division with Kansas City. This is a reality of the situation, and they're going to be way behind in terms of the quarterback situation. To me, you need to try and keep things intact that help you offset that, and this doesn't do that. So, a fascinating move from the Raiders' point of view, and I think a great gamble, quote unquote, from the Giants' point of view, that none of those factors we were just talking about negatively impact them, and they just get an elite playmaker.
Yeah, and you were saying too, you were talking pre-show about Daniel Bellinger maybe not being stoked. That's a great 1-2 punch at tight end. Sure. He was a really good rookie last year. He's a different player. He can make plays as a receiver, but I think a better blocker as of right now than Darren Waller. That's a pretty awesome duo for them in New York.
Yep, so huge move. One of the most talented tight ends in the game, one of the most talented playmakers in the game, Darren Waller, traded to the New York Giants for pick number 100.